All sports, all plays. Yeah. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, they working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.
Get ready. This summer, the Arena League Sports is on ASAP Network. Tune in live on either the T-Live or Roku app, as well as your smart home TV.
What's going on, everybody? ASAP fam, and welcome to the ASAP Afternoon Blitz. I'm your host, Greg, for today. Chris is out. Chris, we hope you feel better soon, my man. Joined by Dustin, aka Stat Guy. What's going on, my man?
Oh, nothing, Greg. Just recovering from a weekend filled with Game 7s, not just in the NBA, but in the NHL.
Yes, indeed. So we had some very shocking outcomes in both Game 7s in the NBA yesterday. Let's start with the one that shocked the most people. Let's start with Mavs and the Suns first. So Mavericks win Game 7 at Phoenix 123-90. Chris Paul and Devin Booker forgot there was a game, and they were just god awful. And Luka was great, and he finally had teammates that knew how to score over 15 points, and that added up to the Dallas Mavericks completely routing the Phoenix Suns at Phoenix. So, Dustin, what were your thoughts on this game? And the second part of that question would be, how big of a stain is this on CP3's legacy? Not only just losing the 2-0 lead, but losing it to basically Luka and some guys, basically.
So this is one of those games where it was over pretty much by halftime. And there was nothing the Phoenix Suns were going to be able to do about it, just because Luka Doncic outscored Phoenix on his own in the first half, which is a feat that not a lot of teams can ever say, especially when you look at how explosive the Phoenix Suns are offensively. So for that to happen is impressive yet alone. And this is also why I said the MVP award needs to stop being a regular season award. Yeah. They need to wait until the playoffs are done before they award the MVP to anybody, because if that was the case, Luka Doncic would be putting himself smack dab in the middle of that conversation right now. I still think Jokic would get it. I still think Jokic and Embiid would have been the top two candidates. But the way that Luka has played in the playoffs, he's cementing himself in the MVP conversation if this award was given to people after the playoffs. And you could even argue now they could do two separate awards, give a regular season MVP and then give a playoff MVP, because if that was the case, Luka Doncic would be getting the playoff MVP right now. Because this Dallas team is feeding off of what he's doing, and he's proving that he is a top 5 superstar in this league. Just by what he's done to Phoenix, what he did in the first round when he played. As far as Chris Paul's legacy, I mean, you really can't stain the guy's legacy, because this was the 4th franchise that he was a part of that he led them to their best record in franchise history. Mm-hmm. So Chris Paul is a top 2 point guard all time, in my opinion. Maybe top 3 if you want to go a little bit further than that, but either way, he's a top 3 point guard all time. He's going to be a Hall of Famer, first ballot. There's no denying that. It's just that he's never had the playoff success that you would expect him to have, and I don't blame that on him. I blame that a lot of times on the coaching. I blame that a lot of times on the supporting cast. But even yesterday, can you honestly blame Chris Paul for yesterday? I mean, yes, he didn't show up because him and Booker struggled. But there was not a team around that was going to beat Dallas yesterday. There was nothing Phoenix could do. So even if Paul would have went off and had 30, 40 points, I still don't think it would have made a difference because of how well Dallas played. Yes, it's going to hurt his legacy a little bit, but I really don't think it should just because Chris Paul's Chris Paul. He's still a Hall of Fame type player that's going to give you amazing numbers every year. He's going to get your team into the playoffs. It's just a matter of can his supporting cast step up around him once the playoffs start.
Yeah. Luka carried the team, especially in that first round, and now everybody else is starting to wake up for Dallas. Spencer Dinwiddie had 30. Jalen Brunson had 24. Dallas played the perfect game yesterday. And when you combine one team playing a perfect game with a team playing their worst game ever for the season, you get what you get. That's what happened last night. So I just look at CP3 and I'm just like, he's never going to win a championship. And and are putting him in the same sentence with James. What? Not only for a game 4, 5, 6. I mean, this was continuing. And the same thing happened in the NBA Finals last year. Like, okay, and the brightest on you these last 2 years, you vanished. Chris Paul vanished. And that the same stain that we have for Bron for vanishing against Dallas in the 2011 final, that's the kind of the same way you got to look at Chris Paul to me. Because he just it was like he wasn't even, there. I mean, Booker gets blamed too because he didn't do nothing either. But you were kind of breaking up there, Dustin.
I guess. Do you blame Chris Paul more, or do you blame Monty Williams more? And I'm going to kind of put more blame on Monty Williams because I said this on the morning show last week and then again with Amon on ASAP Recap on Friday. The Phoenix Suns had a big issue this year. And the big issue was they had such a good regular season that they pretty much had everything clinched heading into that final month of the season. They had the top seed clinched. They had their division clinched where that last 2-3 weeks of the regular season, they could rest some of their players. They could kind of coast into the playoffs and just kind of do what they needed to do to stay healthy versus the rest of the Western Conference actually had to play their starters 100% of the time to try to get playoff positioning. And I blame Monty Williams for that because, yes, you want to keep your team healthy, but you also want your team to be playing its best basketball heading into the playoffs. And the Phoenix Suns were not playing their best basketball heading into the playoffs. I mean, their win-loss record was still great. I think they were either 9-3 or 10-2 heading into the playoffs over their final 12 games, so it's not like they were losing games. But if you look at those 10 wins, they weren't playing the way they did the first 70 games of the year when they were peaking and just like blowing teams out. A lot of their games towards the end of the year were 7-8 point games because you could kind of see Phoenix just kind of coasting and just going through the motions, basically saying, we got our seed, we know we're the 1 seed, we know we have everything wrapped up by now. Let's just get through the regular season without any injuries and try to get into the playoffs. And we've seen it all the time. Whoever goes into the playoffs the hottest usually comes out of the playoffs and gets to the finals. Phoenix Suns did not go into the playoffs the hottest. It was the Dallas Mavericks and the Golden State Warriors who went into the playoffs the hottest, and look at where they're sitting right now. So I blame more so the Phoenix Suns struggles on Monty Williams by just kind of not keeping his foot on the gas to finish out the regular season the way he should have.
Yeah, true. That's true. Monty gets blame also, yeah. And who knows, what's going to happen next season. But If they don't get to the NBA Finals next year, as good as Monty has been, they might have to look elsewhere.
And I think he's going to get another free pass next year just because you have to look at what's going on with DeAndre Ayton right now. And how DeAndre Ayton basically said he was willing to give the Phoenix Suns a hometown discount if they gave him a long-term extension last year.
Mm-hmm.
They did not give him that long-term extension last year. And now he basically said, I'm not giving you guys a hometown discount anymore because when I wanted the hometown discount, you didn't give it to me. So now you have to consider the fact that does Phoenix move on from DeAndre Ayton? And if they do, what is their secondary option? Because JaVale McGee is not a starter that can give you 35, 40 minutes. And without DeAndre Ayton, this is a completely different team. So let's just say Ayton hits the free agent market or they trade him away and bring somebody else in. This is going to be a completely different looking team next year. So does Williams get a free pass again next year, learning how to play without a guy like DeAndre Ayton?
Right, yeah. That's a possibility. I know Bulls fans wouldn't mind Ayton on the Ayton on the Bulls next season. But yeah, that is another thing. And it seemed like Chris Paul, he was playing well up into these last 4 games of the series. It's like he turned 37 and then he all of a sudden he lost that step after after his birthday. So it was just a crazy series. It was back and forth. Luka took it personal, the kind of trash talk that was going on from the Suns, and he got all his payback and more. And they are now in the conference final where they will play Golden State. We'll preview that matchup in a second. Let's now talk about Game 7 that happened in the East with the Celtics and the Bucks. Shout out Mike, Chi-Town Mike, Luka Magic. It was definitely on display yesterday, for sure. The Boston Celtics eliminate the defending champion Bucks 109-81. They are now in the conference final where they will play the Miami Heat. What were your thoughts on this game, Dustin?
I mean, I'm not surprised Boston won because I had Boston winning in 7 from the beginning. I just am more so surprised that how bad the Bucks looked in Game 7. And I give a ton of credit to Boston's defense for just kind of making life miserable for Milwaukee. But you let the Boston Celtics shoot damn near 63 pointers. I mean, even if you go 22 of 60, which I think they went 22 of 60 or 21 of 60, so I mean your percentage is only 34%, which isn't that great.
Right.
But you make 21 3-pointers, that's already 70 points. So you're going to let a team shoot that many threes. You need to adjust on the fly and figure out how to get them off of the perimeter. But you could tell yesterday, and you even as well as Giannis played, becoming the first player in NBA history to do what he did in the playoffs, 200 points, 100 rebounds, and I think 50 assists or something like that in that series or whatever, you could tell that he was relieved that the series was over. And I'm not going to say that he was relieved that they lost. It's more so that he was relieved that he didn't have to go out there another 4 games and do what he did without any help.
Yeah.
And eventually he needs help. For as good of a player as he is, he still needs help, and I think that was the advantage that Boston had going into this series where they have obviously Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who are their superstars, but they also have 4 or 5 other guys that can take the load off of Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Without Chris Middleton, the Bucks don't have a consistent guy that can take the load off of Giannis. Drew Holiday can give you a good game every now and then. Brook Lopez can give you a good game every now and then, but they're not consistently doing it like Middleton can, and I think you saw that as the series went on, where Boston basically said, we're going to let Giannis do whatever he wants to do, score as many points as he wants, because nobody else around him is going to be able to give Milwaukee anything. And you could just see how fatigued Giannis was at the end of the game yesterday, where it just got to the point where I think he was relieved that the series was over now, where he could just kind of reset and be like, I did what I could do.
Right.
Lost.
Right, yeah. Yeah, Giannis definitely did all that he could. The 3-point difference was just staggering. Milwaukee was 4 for 33 at the 3-point yesterday. Um, that's as awful as it gets. The Celtics, they made their 22 threes. They couldn't miss anything, it seemed like. Um, just going through their box score here. Who would have thought Grant Williams would score 27 points for the Celtics? Uh, Tatum had his 23. Even Pritchard, made 4 threes for the Celtics. So the others stepped up for Boston at home, and Boston, they just without Middleton, Giannis didn't have any help, and during the off season, they need to get some more people in there. If you want to keep Holiday and all that, that's fine, but you're going to need somebody else besides Chris Middleton to help out Giannis, because if this situation happens again where Middleton gets hurt, then there's nobody else. And you can't be relying on Grayson Allen and Pat Connaughton to all of a sudden become 20-point scorers, 25-point scorers, because that's just not their game. And Milwaukee relied on the 3 badly. Yeah, they did. They did.
But so did Boston. What the heck? I mean, you can say that Milwaukee relied on the 3-point badly, but what team in the NBA doesn't rely on the 3-pointers right now? If you look at the conference finals right now, 3 of the top 5 shooting 3-point shooting teams volume wise are in the conference finals. The only one that's not in the top 5 is Dallas because they don't shoot a ton of threes, but Miami was number 1 in the Eastern Conference in 3-pointers. Golden State, number 1 in the Western Conference in 3-pointers. I think Boston was number 3 or number 4 in the Eastern Conference in 3-pointers. The NBA is a 3-point shooting league now where if you have good 3-point shooting, chances are you're going to win. And if you don't have it, you're going to lose. It's not a matter of teams living and dying by the 3-point line. That's just how the game is played now, and that's just how every team goes about their business now, even if they shouldn't be doing it that way.
All right, yeah. And Milwaukee, they shot, so they had 33 threes, but you only made 4 of them. If you can make 15 or 18 of those, then you have a different outcome. But
what you just said too. You said Milwaukee shot 33 threes, right?
Yep, 33.
And they were 4 of 33.
Yep.
Boston shot 55. So if anybody lived and died by the 3-pointer, it was the Boston Celtics because they shot 55 3-pointers and 32 2-pointers.
Yep.
Obviously, if you shoot more 3-pointers, you have a better chance of making more. Boston, in the series, out of the 7 games, Boston shot 287 3-pointers in the 7 games. The Bucks shot 203. So both teams lived and died by the 3, but it's just that Boston shot a lot more that eventually you're going to make a lot more.
Gonna start making it, yeah. Gonna start making them. Grant Williams had the game of his life in the biggest game in Game 7.
And what you just said too with Grant Williams, that's another prime example of how the NBA is played now. Grant Williams had the game of his life. He was 7 of 18 from beyond the 3-point line.
Yep.
Outside of Stephen Curry and maybe Klay Thompson, how many players in this league shoot 18 3-pointers in a game?
Not a whole lot.
Exactly. And Grant Williams is a guy that maybe gives you 5 or 6 3-pointers a night. Maybe. Yep. The fact that he shot 18 just shows you how the game is played right now, where they don't care if you shoot 20-some 3-pointers. If you're going to score 20 points off of those 3-pointers, they'll let you shoot as many as you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And his light was definitely green yesterday. I mean, I don't know if he felt free because it's like, hey, it's Game 7. Let's just, do what we do. But it worked out for Boston, definitely. Grant Williams, game of his life. they took a lot of bad shots as well. I think you're talking about the Bucks. Yeah, they had some bad shots in there.
Okay, and what do you
They did out there.
look at the Boston Celtics first quarter? Boston Celtics had one of the worst shot selections I've ever seen in the first quarter. How many times did they just get the ball run and just fire a three like 4 seconds into the shot clock instead of trying to work the ball around? And even like what you were talking about with Williams going 7 of 18 from three-pointers, he was 1 of 7 in the first quarter. And a lot of the shots he shot were forced and were terrible. So I'm surprised Boston let him keep shooting, but he ended up going 6 for 11 after that. But even then, Boston Celtics had a terrible, absolutely terrible shot selection in the first quarter. And then Ime Udoka must have chewed him a new one after the first quarter because the rest of the game, they had a good shot selection versus Milwaukee. Their shot selection in the first quarter was outstanding. You could even say their shot selection in the first half was outstanding, even though they were losing by 5 at halftime. It's once Boston took that 5-point lead and opened it up to 18 points when you saw the Bucks' shot selection go downhill because they were panicking, and they knew that they had to start hitting shots if they wanted to come back, so they started to force a lot of the shots they shouldn't have.
Right. And I know he said Trae Young and Dame, I'm guessing, as shooting a lot of threes. Yeah. I mean, Dame, he's going to shoot his threes, and then Trae, he's going to shoot his too. You expect them to take, 15, threes. You don't expect Grant Williams to do that. so
Especially when the guy had like 43 pointers in the playoffs heading into that game. He literally shot 50% of what he shot the entire playoffs in that game.
Yeah, in that one game. Yeah. So just craziness in both series. I am surprised that the Celtics did get past the Bucks. I thought Giannis would be enough to, carry it, but it was not. And now we have our conference final.
I'm actually not surprised because if you look at the Bucks' first round series against the Bulls, they should have been down 2-0. And that should have been a red flag right from the beginning of the playoffs, like how you are losing to a team as battered and as bruised as the Bulls were. Yeah. And then once Zach LaVine got COVID and once Caruso went out with a concussion, the Bucks really had no competition after that in the first round series to the point where they could have just pretty much benched Giannis and probably still won. The fact that Chicago outplayed them the first 2 games in Milwaukee and walked away 1-1, that should have been a red flag for the Bucks. Like, hey, we need to play better, and yet they played worse. And for as good of a team as they are at home, they had 5 losses in the playoffs. 4 of their 5 losses came at home.
Yeah.
That's a red flag right there because home court advantage is where you are supposed to thrive in the playoffs. And the Bucks didn't do it.
Yeah, it did not. Home was not kind to Milwaukee in these playoffs.
And the thing that really disappointed me yesterday, too, I got so excited for the NBA Game 7s yesterday because I figured they were just going to be epic games because of how the rest of the series was played. And both of them were complete duds. Yeah. Literally. At least Boston and Milwaukee was a good first half, but the second half was a dud. Then you look at the NHL Game 7s yesterday. Both games went into overtime, and it was exactly what you would expect from a Game 7 where everyone's playing for their life and like every second matters. And the NHL Game 7s were so exciting to the point where I turned off the Dallas game and said, I'll watch Calgary and Dallas because at least that game's exciting.
The NBA losing ratings to NHL. That's when you know your game is back.
I think they did because I think they showed the ratings this morning where I think NBA yesterday for their Game 7s had like 31 million viewers between the 2 games, and NHL was close to 50. Just because the NHL games were exciting and were actually worth watching as opposed to one game was over at halftime and the other one was over midway through the third.
Right. And it helps that these games are on
ESPN, and then NBA's on TNT where you don't have to compete with other markets.
Exactly, because NHL used to be on whatever the heck that network was. I can't even think of the name.
NBC Sports Network.
Yeah, NBC Sports Net. That's right. Yeah, and you had to look through your guide and like, where the heck is that? And so now people, okay, it's ESPN. It makes it easier for hockey fans and even a casual fan to be able to, watch it. So NHL product is doing well. Product is doing well. I usually watch if it's the Stanley Cup final. I'll tune in. I usually let them, get all the playoff teams out of there, and then I'll take a look at the Stanley Cup final. Giannis did all he could. He did. It's not his fault. It's not his fault. So let's preview this Eastern Conference final first, Dustin.
Sure.
Miami and Boston. Who do you think will win this series? And then give me the reason why.
I think Boston wins the series in 6. I think it's going to be similar to Milwaukee, where each team splits the first 4 games, and then once you get to Game 5, you're going to see a team that, in my opinion, is more battle-tested in Boston get by Miami, just because Miami went 5 games in their first-round series with Atlanta. Boston went 4 games, but at least they got 4 highly competitive games against Brooklyn. None of those games were actually blowouts, so they actually had to play a full 48 minutes in all 4 of the first-round games. Then you have Milwaukee that won 7 games, where outside of that final game of the series, all 6 of the games before that were highly contested, highly competitive games that Boston had to battle it out. So they're a battle-tested team. When you look at Miami, Jimmy Butler's Miami's all-star. Yeah. But Miami doesn't have an actual superstar that I think can take over the game consistently. Boston has Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who can both take over the game consistently. And I just like the way Boston has played. They've been the best team in the Eastern Conference since the middle of January, which is why they went from the 7 seed up to the 2 seed. And now that they have they literally, in my opinion, you can say what you want about Brooklyn's season because of where they finished, but the 2 teams that were favored to come out of the Eastern Conference at the beginning of the year were Brooklyn and Milwaukee. And Boston went through both of them, and now Boston's got to be considered the favorite because of that reason.
Yeah, definitely. Man, it's hard to pick against Eric Spoelstra because I think he's the best coach. But Jason Tatum and Brown are better than what the Miami Heat have. And as good as Kyle Lowry is, I don't trust him in this kind of on this kind of stage right now. I know he was on the team, they won Toronto, and all that, but that wasn't really because of him. It was because Kawhi won that final. Mm-hmm. But I'm gonna go with the Celtics. I think they'll get it done in 6. I just feel like Tatum, no matter what kind of defense you play, and we saw this in Game 6, when he's on, he's on. There's nothing you can do. And I expect him to have at least 2 of those kind of games in this series. So I have the Celtics winning the Eastern Conference Final in 6 games. We take a look at the Western Conference. The Dallas Mavericks, who the heck would have thought they would have made it this far, against the Golden State Warriors. Your thoughts on that series and who you think is going to win that one?
I'm going Golden State. Golden State was my pick at the beginning of the year to come out of the West, just because last year Golden State literally had a mulligan season last year. They knew Klay Thompson was going to be hurt the whole year. Then you lose Stephen Curry that first month of the season. Golden State pretty much had a year off where they could sit both their superstars, get a very good draft pick, kind of help that team out, and now they've come back, reloaded, and looking like the Golden State that had Kevin Durant. You have Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, and Klay Thompson joining Stephen Curry, where you have 4 guys that can give you 25 points a night, literally. Plus, you have Draymond Green, who does what Draymond Green does. So your starting 5 is better than any other starting 5 that's left, top to bottom. I'm not saying that they have the deepest roster, because I think Boston and Miami have a deeper roster than Golden State does. But on the court, if you put starting 5s up against each other, Golden State has the best starting 5. And the Memphis Grizzlies had the best defense in the Western Conference in the playoffs. And Golden State dropped 142 on them in one of those games.
Yeah, they did.
As well as Luka Doncic has played, he's going to have a very, very, very good series against Golden State, because he is a matchup nightmare. But as good as he has played, Dallas does not have enough firepower to beat Golden State. They are going to win 1 game. They might even get 2 games, because I think they'll play well enough at home to get 1 or 2 games. But I think Golden State wins that series in 6, and I'm not going to be surprised if the games that Golden State wins are pretty lopsided, as opposed to the games that Dallas wins are going to be kind of grinded out, low-scoring games that come down to like the final couple minutes.
Yeah, I have the Warriors winning in 6 also. I'm looking forward to the trash talking between Luka and Draymond in this series, because that's going to happen in one of these games. But Luka is a matchup, a nightmare for any team. Anthony has Warriors in 6. Now, here's a good question. He said, who's checking Luka, or do you just let him go off and lock down everybody else?
Klay Thompson will check Luka.
Okay. Woo! Klay is good, but
Klay Thompson will have to do it because of his size.
His size, right.
Thompson, I think, is 6'8". Luka's 6'9".
Yeah.
You're not going to put Draymond Green on Luka, because Draymond Green's your post player.
Your post.
So your only other option is Andrew Wiggins, who's 6'7", or Klay Thompson, who's 6'8". So you got to go with Klay Thompson, just because at least he's a little bit more physical than Wiggins.
Right. And basically,
they might do the same strategy that Boston did with Milwaukee.
Right.
Let Luka go off and have his, and then make everybody else on that roster consistently beat you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the best strategy for the Warriors in this series, is to do that. Let Luka get his 35-40 and lock down on everyone else. Because when you do that, you see what happens. Dallas loses badly in those games when those things do happen. So, but when the others show up, that's when Dallas wins. So I look forward to that series. It's gonna be a lot of chatter. Luka's gonna give it to the Golden State fans. I'm sure he's gonna be doing the smirk and all that. But at the end of the day, I believe Golden State, because they've been there and done that.
Yep.
They will win this series in 6 games. We are going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we will talk about the games we're looking forward to in the upcoming NFL season.
Whole sports, all plays. Whole sports, all plays. Whole sports, all plays. 365, we're making up plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. Whole sports, all plays. Whole sports, all plays. Network. We on top of our game. Whole sports, all plays. Whole sports, all plays.
Alrighty. So, we lost Dustin. the NFL schedule came out, and there are some interesting games that that I'm looking forward to. Um, those that watched Red Kingdom on Saturday, we went through the Chiefs schedule. You all know the two games that I'm looking forward to as far as the Kansas City Chiefs at Tampa, and then at the Cincinnati Bengals. Those are our payback games. And so I wanted to also talk about other games that are going to be of interest around the league. As we got Dustin back.
Yeah, that was really weird. I went from break, and all of a sudden I was not in StreamYard anymore. That was really weird.
Yeah. So any
break kicked me out.
What are the games that you're looking forward to in the NFL season there?
Well, there's two of them that I'm looking forward to right away in week 1.
Okay.
And one of them is the first game of the NFL season, where it could be a potential Super Bowl preview between the Bills and Rams. That game, to me, I think a lot of people are very curious to see if the Rams can basically repeat this year, just because you had Cooper Kupp playing the way that Cooper Kupp played last year. Can he do that again this year? But then you have to add into the mix that the Bears lost Allen Robinson, and Allen Robinson signed with the Rams, who is a better number 2 option than Robert Woods is. So what is that going to do to Matthew Stafford? Is Robert Woods going to go back to the Rams and be their number 3? Is Beckham going to go back? Or yeah, so I don't know. And the Bills, I know you're a Chiefs fan, and I'm not going to say the Chiefs aren't going to make the Super Bowl because they still have a shot to do it. But you have to at least agree with me on this point that Buffalo probably has the deepest roster in the AFC top to bottom.
Yes.
And that alone, I think, has to give Buffalo a good chance, especially when you look at now the overtime rule has been changed because of what happened between the Chiefs and Bills this postseason. Had that overtime rule been in place last year, who knows how long that game would have went on until somebody would not have scored.
Yeah.
But Buffalo, the last couple of years, Buffalo has come so close to making the Super Bowl. Kansas City took them out this year, and just it is what it is. And Buffalo has all the pieces, though. You have Josh Allen, a top 5 quarterback. You have Stephon Diggs, a top 10 wide receiver. You have a top 5 defense who was actually number 1 against the pass until Patrick Mahomes torched them. The only thing that Buffalo is lacking is a running game, which I think their running game is going to be better this year. So that game right away on the national stage, it's only week 1, so obviously every team's going to look different in 18 weeks. But that's still a potential Super Bowl preview, in my opinion, just because both those teams, in my opinion, are the deepest teams roster-wise in each conference. I think the Rams have the deepest roster top to bottom in the NFC. And I think Buffalo has the deepest roster top to bottom in the AFC. The other game I'm looking forward to right away is Russell Wilson's return to Seattle in week 1 when Denver goes to Seattle in week 1. NFL, I guess, wanted to waste no time to say, hey, Russell, you can go back and visit your old team in week 1. And I'm just sitting here like, this is supposed to be Drew Lock's moment to basically show Seattle that he can be a reliable starting quarterback. You know damn well that Russell Wilson is going to get a bigger ovation than Drew Lock is going to get that first week of the NFL season. So how is that going to make Drew Lock feeling, knowing that he's supposed to be this new quarterback in town trying to prove him, and then all of a sudden the visiting team comes in and their quarterback's getting a better ovation than you are just because of what he's meant to that franchise the last 11 seasons.
Yeah.
So those are 2 games that I'm looking forward to right away. For the first time in a long time, I actually think the Thanksgiving Day games are actually going to be worth watching this year. I mean, Detroit and Dallas, they're always on, but I mean, there's nothing you can do about that just because they're always on. So you're going to get stuck with them. But New England at Minnesota, the cap off the nightcap on Thanksgiving is going to be a good game. Giants always play Dallas tough no matter what the record is. So, I mean, you have to throw them in there to give Dallas a good game on Thanksgiving. I think Washington at Detroit's the other one, right?
Bills and the Lions.
Bills and the Lions. So there, you get Josh Allen on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, good
I
job.
mean, at least you have a very good Thanksgiving slate. And then you look at Christmas Day, too. NFL wants to compete with the NBA. NBA has always been known to be the ones that are the Christmas Day people. They get to have the 3 Christmas Day games, 4 Christmas Day games where everybody sits down and watches NBA. NFL's like, hold my beer. We're going to give you 3 NFL games on Christmas Day to see who gets the better ratings. So, I mean, there's a lot of intriguing games this year in the NFL, especially when you look at the offseason that everybody had. So many games have players that came from the team that they're going to play.
Yeah.
And that's going to add so much intrigue throughout the year just to be like, who made the right decisions? Was Carson Wentz going to Washington the right decision? Was Seattle moving on from Russell Wilson the right decision? I just think when you look at how the offseason went this year, it's going to lead into a very interesting NFL regular season. As if last season wasn't surprising enough, I think this season could be even more shocking and more surprising.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Anthony says the Ravens, Titans, and Browns won't make the playoffs. Now, if the Ravens don't make it and Lamar Jackson is healthy, we need to start asking some questions about that. Because for him to be the franchise guy, that would be on him if they don't make the playoffs. I feel like Lamar should be better than what he is by now as far as throwing the football. But if the Ravens don't make it and it's because of him, you might have to start thinking about drafting a quarterback if you're Baltimore.
Well, I mean, the other thing you got to look at too now is Lamar Jackson doesn't have Marquise Hollywood Brown to throw to.
Yep.
You have Mark Andrews, who, hey, yeah, Mark Andrews is going to give you lots of points, lots of scoring chances, but you don't have you don't have Hollywood Brown to throw to anymore. So Lamar Jackson's been criticized for being an inaccurate passer. He's been criticized for not being the greatest passer. And now you took away one of his top 2 receiving weapons. You're going to hurt his development even more. And I think that's something that any Baltimore Raven fan needs to understand this year. Any Baltimore Raven fan needs to be, I think, especially patient with Lamar Jackson this year, just because outside of Mark Andrews, he doesn't have another option that he consistently can trust.
All right. Yeah. Mark Andrews is his security blanket as of right now. So Lamar shouldn't have waited for that contract. Should have signed it already. Yep. Yep, that was the time to get all the money he wanted because if they don't make the playoffs, it's not going to be there for him. I look for this, I call it the Skip Bayless Bowl, the Tampa-Dallas game in Week 1. That'll be fun. That'll be a fun game.
Dallas at Green Bay will be another one with McCarthy returning to Green Bay to see kind of how the fans actually treat him, knowing that they were the ones that kind of wanted him out of Green Bay in the first place, and then you kind of look at the drama that Aaron Rodgers has put the Packers through the last couple of years. Are fans going to kind of be like, okay, maybe McCarthy wasn't the issue, and maybe it was kind of Aaron Rodgers bumping heads with him for so long that it just got to the point where the Packers organization had to pick one or the other, and obviously we know who they're going to choose, but that's kind of something you have to look at. Was McCarthy actually the issue, or was it Aaron Rodgers just being Aaron Rodgers for so long that it got to the point where the Packers had to choose between one of the two.
Yeah. And you look at Tampa's first two games, so you're at Dallas and then you're at the Saints. If they lose that Dallas game, Tom Brady and the Bucs could go 0-2 to start the season.
And yeah, and the Saints is another team that I'm very interested to watch this year, mainly because not only did they take the Honey Badger away from you, which I feel for you because I never thought the Honey Badger should have left Kansas City, and I thought the Chiefs should have been on the phone trying to get him from day one. I don't understand what took them so long to be like, hey, we're not going to re-sign you, and then you let the guy go to New Orleans. But the addition of Jarvis Landry also is going to be huge for New Orleans because now you have Michael Thomas, you have Jarvis Landry, you have what's the other receiver that was good last year? I can't think of his name. The one that stepped up. Pride, where are you when I need you? You love this guy.
Pride. Where's Pride?
Oh God.
Yeah, I can't think of it either.
Yeah, but he's going to be your number two. I mean, he could technically be your number 2 or number 3 option.
Yep.
That shows you how scary that team is. And you look at New Orleans Saints defense last year. That was the one thing that kind of saved the Saints last year was their defense. And now you add a guy like Matthew to the back end of that defense. It makes that defense even better than what it was. Tom Brady has obviously shown historical struggles against the New Orleans Saints, especially the last couple of years since he's been with Tampa. So, I mean, or Marcus Callaway, that's the other receiver, Marcus Callaway.
Callaway, yeah. Right.
But that just shows you, like, the matchup problems that the Saints have always given Tampa Bay. And the Saints only missed the playoffs by 1 game last year. And that was without a quarterback because Winston went down, and then the Saints had a revolving door at quarterback. So if Winston can stay healthy, he showed last year that he can still play football at a good level. And you still have a good defense. You have more weapons that the Saints have added. The Saints are going to be a scary team. As long as they are able to keep that defense intact, which I think they will because Dennis Allen, who was the defensive coordinator, got promoted to head coach, so it's not like their defensive scheme is going to change. And now you're giving Jameis Winston more weapons, which definitely is going to help the Saints improve this year. I'm not going to be surprised if the Saints contend with Tampa Bay for that NFC South title.
Yeah. Tampa's starting off, if it happened that way, 0-2 to start the season would definitely be a shock to most people. It's a lot of, I'm surprised, and I don't know if they would have been able to do it because of the scheduling. I'm surprised we didn't have Brady versus Belichick 2 this season. I'm very surprised we didn't have that for a second time.
Well, it's because of how the NFL schedule works, and it's so they would face the AFC East once every 3 years.
Yeah.
But then you would have like your 6 games against your division, and then you'd play like 2 divisions in full, which make up your 14 games. And then you would have just kind of 3 random games thrown in there. But those 3 random games come against teams that finish in a similar spot than what you did. So with Tampa Bay winning the NFC South, their 3 additional games would be teams that won their division, which is why they won't get the Patriots again because the Patriots didn't win their division.
Didn't win their division. Okay, I see. Yeah, that would have been a very interesting game again. Just like it was last season. But yeah, I'm looking forward. Look, everybody knows that the Chiefs' schedule is hard. We talked about it on Saturday's show. Vegas has them winning only like 10 games, but I feel like the Chiefs are good enough to win 13 or 14. It just depends on how good this defense is going to be. Because it's there. the defenders that they drafted in this draft are really good. It's all, can they pick up Spag's system?
Don't get mad at me for saying this, Greg, because I really like you, and I don't want you to hate me. And this doesn't
Okay.
mean this doesn't mean the Chiefs are bad,
Yeah.
but I think Vegas is kind of right in line when they say the Chiefs are going to win 10 games. And the only reason why I say that is look at how much the AFC West has improved in terms of what these teams did in free agency. I think all 4 teams from the AFC West get in the playoffs. And I think the division winner goes 10-7, possibly 11-6, and then the rest of the division goes 10-7, and it just depends on the tiebreakers, who gets the 5 seed, who gets the 6 seed, and who gets the 7 seed.
Right.
Because you put Denver, Vegas, or the Chargers in any other division, maybe minus the AFC East because of Buffalo, they would be the favorites to win, not only win that division, but they would be the favorites to run away with the division. So just being how tough the AFC West is, it's going to be hard for anybody to win more than 11 games in that division just because that division is so strong. But the good thing about that is you get out of that division, you're going to be battle-tested for the playoffs, and there's not going to be a single team in the playoffs that's going to want to face anybody that comes from that division.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. The AFC West is the best division in football this season. Anthony had a good question. So why the Cowboys have an easy schedule? They won their division. They won their division last year.
It's because of who the NFC East plays in their crossover division games this year. It just happens that they got 2 easy divisions in their crossover games this year, and then obviously they faced 3 other teams that took first place. And this is why I never go by – this is why strength of schedule annoys me. And I don't know if it's just me just being anal, but whenever you see the NFL schedules get released in May, and then you get into the NFL season, they always say this team has the hardest strength of schedule, this team has the 20th, the 32nd, whatever. But that strength of schedule is based off of how that team finished the year before. They don't take into account of who the team drafted. They don't take into account of who the team signed in free agency or who the team lost in free agency. It's based off of the year prior's winning percentage. So you can look at the Cowboys schedule and say, well, they have an easy schedule because the winning percentage shows this. Well, that winning percentage is based off of what that team did last year. It's not looking at who they signed and who they lost this past offseason, which I guarantee you, if you did that, every strength of schedule would look different from when the schedule was released in May to when the season starts in September. That strength of schedule thing would be completely blown up and thrown out of sorts because they're going to finally be going the way they should be going. And that's how I've always felt strength of schedule should be. They got to stop doing it based off of how the team finished last year. They need to look at who the team signed, who the team lost, who the team drafted, and then kind of decide how you're going to do your strength of schedule that year.
Right, yeah. Yeah, strength of schedule, I never really cared that much for. That's just more numbers for, people to look at and, things like that. But I look at the Cowboys, so this is my first time looking at their schedule. And they got like 5 hard games, which is Tampa, Cincy, then at the Rams.
Now you got Green Bay in there.
Yeah, then Green Bay. Yeah, and then the Vikings. So you're either looking at 5 losses. Colts also. They play the Colts.
Because, look at the Cowboys schedule right now. Like you said, they have Tampa Bay, good team. Yep. Cincinnati, good team. Giants, we don't know what they're going to be yet. Right. Washington, they added Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz typically does very well against Dallas, so that could be an interesting game. Rams, obviously, that's going to be a tough game. The Eagles got A.J. Brown, so that's not going to be an easy game for them anymore because A.J. Brown is A.J. Brown. Then you have Lions and Bears, which should be relatively easy. Packers are the Packers. Minnesota's got a new head coach and a lot of new pieces added to that mix, so who knows what they're going to be. Colts have Matt Ryan coming in, so we don't know what the Colts are going to look like with him. And then you have Houston and Jacksonville, which should be relatively clear cut and dry. I don't think Tennessee is going to be nearly as good as what they were last year because they lost A.J. Brown. And that's what we're talking about right there with strength of schedule. Tennessee is going to give Dallas a better strength of schedule because they had a good team last year. They're not taking into account that Tennessee lost A.J. Brown this year. Otherwise, that would drastically change the way people think about the Titans.
Yeah, definitely. And I never was a fan of Tannehill as a quarterback. So now with A.J. Brown gone,
there's a reason why they drafted Malik Willis.
Yeah. They're going to be see a lot of 8 and 9-man fronts. So
so I just pulled up the Packers schedule just because I'm in Wisconsin, so it's easy for me to pull up the Packers schedule. And right now the Packers have the 20th hardest or the 20th easiest strength of schedule. And obviously it's because of last year's winning percentage. When you look at the Packers, they have Minnesota week 1. Minnesota was under 500 last year. But I think everyone expects them to be better. You have Chicago week 2, under 500 last year. I don't think anyone expects them to be too much better, but they're still going to be a better team. Then you have Tampa Bay, New England as your next 2 games. Tampa Bay and New England had good records last year, but New England was barely above 500, but they improved. Then you got the Giants and the Jets back-to-back, which neither team is really that good.
No.
Washington is in there. Washington was under 500 last year, but again, you add Carson Wentz to the mix. Who knows how they're going to do? Then you have Buffalo. Obviously, Buffalo's Buffalo. Detroit twice. Dallas you have coming to Green Bay. Dallas has got a decent record, but who knows what they're going to do. Tennessee and Philly, both those teams were above 500, but I think we can say that Philadelphia improved more than what Tennessee improved. And then you got the Rams and the Dolphins before you get the rest of the division. Again, Dolphins were under 500 last year, but they added Tyreek Hill and other pieces. Another team that's going to be better than what their record was last year, but all that stuff is what goes into the whole strength of schedule crap. It's because 10 of the 17 teams the Packers play this year were either 500 or below, which gives them an easy strength of schedule.
Right. Going off of last year's record, which I never understood why they did it like that.
Do you know who had the hardest strength of schedule this past year?
No, I don't.
Going based off of records? It was the Rams.
Wow.
Rams had the hardest strength of schedule when the season started based off of how those teams finished the year before. And the Rams started, 7-0? With the Cardinals before they lost? And that was because a lot of the teams they played at the beginning of the year either lost significant pieces from the year before or certain players got injured either early in the season or before the season started, which obviously affects their team. So the Rams probably in reality had maybe a schedule that was ranked around 20th by the time the season started as opposed to being the hardest schedule when the schedule was released.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm looking at these people make these win total predictions, and I'm looking at them, and they got the Cowboys at 10.5. They got the who else they got on here? The Browns at 9.5, which I think that's kind of high. I don't know if you've seen these, Dustin. Was there anybody on these NFL wins predictions that you think was kind of high?
You said kind of high?
Yeah, kind of high. Like, I don't think they're gonna win that many.
Let me pull that up quick. There was a couple that I thought were actually kind of low too.
Yeah.
It's not on. Oh, mac and cheese.
All right, let's see here. Hold on 1 second.
What?
So let's see here. I think Kansas City's win prediction, like I said, I think they're going to be pretty much right on, kind of in that 10 or 11 win range just because the division's just so tough. I want to say they're going to win more than 10 or 11 games, but I could also see them winning only 9 games if their defense doesn't shape up. It's just one of those divisions where it's so tough. But you look at my Buffalo Bills at 11.5. I think that might even be low. I could see, like I said, Buffalo winning 13 games just because how deep of a roster that team has, and there's really not many teams in the AFC that can compete with them in terms of what they can do offensively, what they can do defensively. Miami at 8.5, I think, could be slightly low, just if Tyreek Hill and Tua can coexist.
Yeah.
New England at 8.5, I think, is low.
Yeah.
Cincinnati at 9.5, I think, is very low. I don't even know how you give Cincinnati under 10.5 wins when you look at what they did last year, when you look at the connection that Chase and Burrow had last year, and what did they do this entire offseason? They spent money on doing the one thing they couldn't do last year, and that's protect Joe Burrow. So I don't even understand how they get under 11 wins. So that one to me is extremely low.
That's low.
Let's see. AFC South is pretty much fine. I think the Raiders at 8.5 is low just because we saw how well the Raiders played last year. Now you give Derek Carr, Devontae Adams. He's being brought in to replace Henry Ruggs, and he's miles better than Henry Ruggs.
Oh, yeah.
So again, the Raiders at 8.5 I think is low just because they were a good team last year. Giants at 7 I think is way more than what they're going to get, especially this year under Brian Daboll. I'm not saying Daboll's a terrible head coach, but you've already admitted that you're not picking up Daniel Jones' option beyond this year. So if that's the case, what reason do you have to start Daniel Jones all year if you're not going to pick up his option beyond this year? So I think their 7-win total is going to be high. Bears at 6.5 I think is slightly low. Minnesota at 9. I'm not going to say it's low, but I could see Minnesota winning 10 games. So I think they're kind of right where they need to be. The Packers at 11 I think is high. And the only reason why I say that is who is Aaron Rodgers going to trust when it comes to the receiving core? Do you trust –
I was asking you to spirit.
Okay. Do you trust Sammy Watkins to play a full 16-game season? I don't, because he hasn't done that since his rookie year. Do you trust Randall Cobb to be your number one option? Nope. He's 34 and he's not a number one. So right now your number one option is Alan Lazard, who is not a number one, and you have to decide if Watson, Cobb, and Watkins can do whatever you need them to do out of the number 2. So I think they go through plenty of growing pains early, which you still have Aaron Rodgers, but I think they can get to 10 wins, but I don't think 11 is going to be feasible unless they pick up another wide receiver, and I don't know who they can pick up at this point that they can afford realistically. And then who else do I see here? I think Atlanta at 5.5 is low because they won 7 games last year. So I don't understand how they can – they lost Matt Ryan, but, Marcus Mariota, you can probably get similar numbers to what Matt Ryan's given you the last couple of years, plus he can make plays with his legs. So that should be at least able to give you 7.5 wins. New Orleans at 7.5. That one right there to me is kind of a slap in the face, and I think more so of the Sean Payton effect that Sean Payton's not there. Because you look at that roster that New Orleans has, you cannot tell me that's a 7-win football team. You just can't. I just don't understand how you can say, oh, yeah, they're only going to win 7 games with the roster they have. No, that's just not going to happen. They have a much better roster than that. And then go to the NFC West, picking the Rams to only win 10.5.
Sure.
Rams really have not lost anybody from that Super Bowl roster, and they added Allen Robinson to the mix. So I don't see how you can pick them at 10.5 when I think Cincinnati and the Rams are the ones that I think kind of got shafted the most on the win prediction because both those teams were in the Super Bowl last year, and both those teams added more so than subtracted.
Yeah, definitely. And, the Rams, I feel like they're going to win more than 10. Cincy, I can see them winning 10. It'll be between the Rams and the Niners in that NFC West, and we all know Jimmy G is going to do some stupid stuff in some games for the 49ers to lose games. But could I still see the 49ers winning 10? with their defense, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Tampa at 11 and a half. That's because Tom Brady is bad. But again, if they start off 0-2 to start the season, then their chances of winning the 11, kind of shrink. So I just found it kind of interesting. I agree with you on the Falcons. Marcus Mariota can't be that bad to where the Falcons only win 5 games or less. They won 7 with Matt Ryan, so I feel like they can still win 7. Um, I'm not saying the Falcons are going to be a playoff team, but I mean they can still win 7 games. Chargers 10, yeah, that sounds about right. So I think honestly, um, the Bears at 6.5. I feel like they're going to have a better season than what they had last year. Again, not a playoff team, but they can win. I feel like just because the shadow of Matt Nagy is now gone Justin Fields is going to play better, and I can see them winning 7, maybe 8 games.
Because they won 7 last year.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I can definitely see that. The Texans are still going to suck. The Lions, yeah, I can see them winning 6. Yeah, for sure. Their first round of drafting was
Now,
very
that's another team that I think could actually win more, and it's just because of who they drafted. Same
yeah.
thing. Same thing with the Jets. What's the Jets win total right now that they have on there? Isn't that like 6 or 5.5?
5.5. Yep.
You look at what the Jets did in the first round. What the Jets did in the first round could easily get them 7 wins, as long as Zach Wilson can not do stupid stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Jets win 7 or 8 games just because their first round of the draft was such an amazing first round that can give them an additional 2 or 3 wins this year.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. And with the Lions, they have
Lions got the Williams guy from Alabama as their wide receiver to go along with Hutchinson, and then you're going to have Quintez Cephas come back. You have that Armon St. Brown who emerged as Detroit's #1. Plus, you still have T.J. Hawkinson. You drafted Penny Sewell last year to help on the offensive line, and then your top cornerback in Jeff Okudah was hurt last year, and he'll be back. So Detroit's going to be better in every facet.
Mhm. And I feel like, I know Dan Campbell kind of comes off as some guy that's kind of crazy, but
I love Dan. Hey, I love Dan Campbell.
but I feel like he's the right coach for them, and I believe they will win more games. And now we're gonna see how good Jared Goff is, because now Jared
Yep.
Goff can say, "Well, I don't have nobody to throw to." Well, yes, you do.
Yeah.
You
The
do have.
thing is with Dan Campbell, he's the one coach that everybody wants to play with just because of that speech he gave when he was hired. Granted, yes, he's not going to actually have his players go out there and bite people's kneecaps off, but when you hear your head coach kind of come out and say that in his first introductory press conference, there's not a single player on that team that will not run through a wall for Dan Campbell.
Exactly. Exactly. So I feel like the Lions will be much improved from last season. And 8.5 for the Patriots. I still feel like the Patriots are still going to make the playoffs, if not win the AFC East. Because I know the Dolphins got Hill, but let's start being honest about it. Tua doesn't have the arm strength for those big plays with Tyreek Hill. So I don't really know how that's going to work out. I mean, they'll be able to do more. They can run, sweeps and and do the slants and all that with them. But as far as the deep ball, I just feel like Tua's arm strength is not up to the level for those big plays to hit Tyreek Hill. But
No, I agree there, but he still has Waddle as his other receiver. You still have Gesicki, great tight end.
Yep.
You brought in Cedric Wilson Jr. from the Cowboys, who was a number 4 option in Dallas, who's now going to be a number 3 option with a chance to be a number 2, depending on how things work out. You got Terran Armstead from New Orleans on the offensive tackle, which is going to be huge because that's going to be able to keep Tua Tagovailoa upright because he's one of the better tackles in the league. And then your running backs are Chase Edmonds, who is a great receiving running back, as well as a running back, and then Mostert. If Mostert is healthy, we've seen what he can do. So Miami might not, and they still have Myles Gaskin too. Miami might not be, and then I think they drafted Lynn Bowden out of Kentucky, and he's actually a pretty good wide receiver also. But Miami's not going to be one of those teams that's going to take the ball over the top of the defense because Tua Tagovailoa doesn't have the arm to do that. And if he gets hurt, your backup is Teddy Bridgewater, another quarterback that really doesn't have the arm to take the top off of the defense. But what Miami has that a lot of teams don't have is they have at least 7 or 8 options in the passing game. That includes the running backs that can catch screen passes out of the backfield, and then Tyreek Hill, who can do so many things that a lot of people can't do, and just even Lynn Bowden, the rookie out of Kentucky, is kind of a version of Tyreek Hill where he does a little bit of everything. Miami's going to have a very creative offense. Their new head coach was the offensive coordinator in San Francisco last year, so having him come there, I'm not going to be surprised to see him design a lot of the plays that he designed for Debo last year for Tyreek Hill. So, I mean, just the play design itself is what's going to make Miami interesting because they're kind of in a weird niche where they don't have a strong arm quarterback to take the top off the defense, but they have a lot of different options they can use in the passing game that's going to keep the defensive schemes guessing all the time.
Yeah, definitely. So the East is going to be good too with Buffalo, Patriots, and Dolphins. The AFC East is going to be a good division as well. But as we all know, the AFC West is definitely the hardest this season. So that'll do it for the ASAP Afternoon Blitz. You have any final thoughts, Dustin, before we sign off here?
Yeah, I don't know if you heard about this over the weekend, but Eddie Jackson, safety of the Chicago Bears, lost his 4-week-old child and had to basically put her, she passed away, but he had to basically bury her this weekend. And having 2 kids myself, obviously, anytime you lose a child before you go is going to be difficult. But the fact that this child was barely even a month old kind of puts into perspective like how rough things can be. And I know Eddie Jackson has gotten a bad rap in Chicago the last couple of years because of how he's played. So it'll be interesting to see if that affects his play this year or if it's going to motivate him a little more this year. But I just want to give my condolences to Eddie Jackson and his family because losing a child, especially that young of a child, is obviously nothing any parent can prepare for because there's nothing you can do to prepare for it.
Yeah, definitely. And our prayers go out to him and his family for that loss. Definitely. So, and also our want to give condolences and prayers to those people that were lost in a senseless violence act in
Milwaukee.
Buffalo, right?
And Milwaukee too.
Oh, and the Milwaukee. Okay, I didn't know there was another one.
After game, oh God, was it game 5 or after game 6 in Milwaukee, 12 people were shot.
Wow.
Same thing happened last year too in the NBA Finals against Phoenix, except there was only 5 people last year as opposed to 12. But yeah.
So our hearts go out to all those involved. Buffalo was more of a racial deal, and one day we have to learn that we all got to live together in this world. And, we are not all that different. And once we start getting that through some people's heads, then we can have a better world. So condolences and prayers to all those people, to the victims and their families. This has been at the ASAP Afternoon Blitz. For my man Stat Guy, Dustin, I am Greg. We thank you for watching, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good rest of the day.
All sports, all plays. Yeah. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you to the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces.